and welcome to Undercurrent, where we look at what's been happening in the Perth community. I'm your host, Lissy Marchant. Those fighting for the right to live on Heirisson Island have taken the city of Perth to court, but this court case is just one of the many battles they face as the government looks to cut services to remote communities in Western Australia. This has many worried about their land rights.
Today we're at the Federal Court seeking an injunction. Over the last years, 3 to 4 years, the police and Perth City Council together have come to Heirisson Island. The Aboriginal people call it Marricarab. Over this last winter, there was 9 raids in a row that were really inhumane, the treatment the Aboriginal people had to put up with. So we're coming today to seek an injunction against the state and against Perth City Council for their inhumane actions in Marricarab against the Aboriginal people. This is about human rights. This is about Aboriginal sacred sites. This is about white people seeing what's happening to their Aboriginal brothers and sisters. It's appalling. It's not just a story on the TV. It's appalling what's happening to human beings.
This is not just happening at Marricarab, this is happening all over the state where they're planning on closing the communities. What do you have to say about this?
Well, the forced closure of the communities, that in itself is not right. They're taking away people from their homelands, where their heritage, their identity, their culture has survived and lived for thousands of years. These people aren't just living there for the sake of living there. Their heritage, their culture, their ancestors, their dads and mums for generations have lived there, and they are pushing them off their communities into the towns and that, and we don't believe that is right, and not at all. And what's happening at Heirisson Island is the same.
What sorts of tactics are they using to push people out of these communities at the moment?
Well, up in the communities now, they're cutting all resources, water, power, everything. No one's to go in. Nothing government is to go into there. Funding, nothing at all. They're cutting everything from the people. To me, they set these communities up to fail. These communities that these people have lived on for generations, they should have been set up as like resorts and proper accommodation and that. Our people up in those communities, they've been forced to live in third world conditions for a very long time, and the state comes into their communities and mines all their mines. It takes all the minerals and resources from their land, but just over the horizon is these communities with nothing.
What's going to happen to all these people when they're forced out of these communities?
Well, where do they go? Where do they go? Ask yourself, if you're watching this on the TV, these people are homeless. Where do they go?
They will go. These people will go into the local towns, the bigger towns in the communities. But what no one understands is we have law protocols and boundaries. These people will be going into other Aboriginal people's homelands, and with our protocols and that, it's not a done thing. You're not allowed to go into other people's land and live. We're talking about homeless people that are forced into a community where they don't belong. They don't belong spiritually and culturally. They have no connection to that country where they're forced into. Where do the people go? Only places I could see our people going to is into the prisons and into the children into care. It's heartbreaking to see these people. They have culture. They still practice culture. They still have their traditions. Everything that was smashed out of us upon invasion.
What is your ideal solution here?
The ideal solution is Aboriginal people should decide their own future. Marricarab or Heirisson Island is a sacred site. There is no harm to the community whatsoever if they're left alone to hold on to what is Aboriginal culture, which we as white people should be very proud of.
In the last 3 to 4 years, 300 sacred sites have been deregistered in Western Australia. They're taking away everything about our identity, our culture, all our sacredness that lies within our land. They're ripping it away from us. The solution for all Aboriginal issues in Australia, I believe, is for our people to start administering our own Aboriginal affairs. For our people to have an Aboriginal man or woman as the Aboriginal Affairs Minister. It is so sad that we even stand here. for non-Indigenous people, such as the federal court, to be making these decisions. We are sovereign people. I don't know if the state and the federal governments understand we are sovereign. We have not ceded our sovereignty. We are the sovereign people, and places like this should not determine our existence, our heritage, our culture, our sacredness. It should not be happening.
Decent white people in this community should get behind the Aboriginal people and say that their land rights is important. It is part of our future as all West Australians.
Lucy Marchant for Undercurrent. Social media and the digital world plays a big role in people's lives, but is it helping them build relationships or is it disconnecting them from the real world? Bas Tadros finds out more.
Today I'm speaking with Tenille Bentley, digital consciousness coach, international speaker and author. Is the social media and today's digital world connecting us, or is it in fact disconnecting us? We're seeing with Pokemon, the game that's become a world phenomena, people playing the game to their demise and to their death. So it'll be interesting to find out in Tenille's views whether digital media and social media is in fact connecting us or disconnecting us. So, Tenille, what are your thoughts about the current social media and its impact on people's lives, relationships in particular?
Yeah, great question. Well, I think like most people out there would recognise that social media and digital media has this capacity for us to feel so connected yet so disconnected all at the same time. And it's quite a paradox that we can sit in that realm, and the effect that it actually has on relationships, the effects. It can be both positive and negative. I truly believe that it's an individual perception of how we choose to use this space. And it's also having that conscious capacity within a relationship to know that we still are human, we still all need human connection.
So although it could be a distraction, you think it could also be a self-actualization tool in terms of finding what you're searching for within?
Yeah, look, it's like anything in life, everything in moderation. So where is my balance scale in being plugged in online and then unplugging and then plugging into the offline? So making sure that we are consciously aware of that plug in, plug out facility and what we're doing and how we are showing up in our relationships, how we're showing up with our connections online.
What is your take on the current gaming and social media that can be quite distracting and sometimes even destructive in the sense that people are using it while they're driving or they're walking into things or having accidents as they're playing Pokemon, for example? That's pretty popular these days.
Yeah, I heard that it's already turned over, or it already brought in $10 billion worth of profit worldwide. So it's a pretty epic venture of what's happened. But what we're doing is we're feeding off the addictive nature of human behaviour, and it's like any addiction. It's like with drugs, with alcohol, whatever it might be, that we start to find this addiction, and it's a similar capacity of addictive behaviours that occur when using social media. So again, as opposed to the actual portal or the software or the social media being the issue, it's more about the individual and how they actually start to tap into self and realise and actualise the fact that they are addicted to something. Making sure we spend the time, if it serves us, to spend the time online and connect with people online, because it's an amazing tool when you think about it. Like, we get to connect with people we would otherwise never get to connect with, and so to be able to have the capacity to do that is amazing, and it's just fantastic what we've got at our fingertips. However, the power at the fingertips is also, well, who's the user? Why are we posting? What's our intention behind our post? Where does that come from? And are we looking at that from an ego perspective? Are we trying to get more likes? Are we trying to get more people? Are we checking in to see what's happening? Using that as a modality of awareness to then teach ourselves to be more digitally conscious.
So there you have it. Even in the case of social media and the digital world, all you may be required is a fine balance. Bas Tadros for Undercurrent.
Last week, asbestos was found at a new Perth Children's Hospital. We hit the streets of Perth to find out your reaction.
It's been confirmed roof panels at the billion-dollar Perth Children's Hospital are riddled with asbestos. And the Chinese company that supplied them also did work on Fiona Stanley Hospital and the new Perth Stadium.
Today we're taking to the streets of Perth to look into people's opinions on the recent finding of asbestos contamination in the materials that are going into the new Perth Children's Hospital. Does this impact the workers? Does it impact the people on site? And will it have an impact on the building going forward? We'll find what Perth has to say on that.
Having asbestos in a health centre, not a great idea.
Yeah, that should not have happened in the first place.
Hopefully nobody's actually inhaled any asbestos. But, and I think it's great it was caught early, before the children were in the hospital.
I'm pretty surprised that in this day and age you can still find asbestos in building products.
The unions have every right to consider their members first in this instance, and obviously the building codes or import requirements need to be re-evaluated, I would have thought.
Who do you think in this case should be held accountable?
The builders and whoever built the hospital first and checked it before they went ahead and built it.
The project guys who are involved in it, so whoever are the stakeholders, should be held responsible.
I think John Holland should be accepting the risks, and they should be held to account for employing contractors who were using subgrade or substandard materials.
I think that there's somehow been some form of systemic flaw in that particular contract's purchasing of those products from that Chinese manufacturer.
Obviously something's fallen down somewhere, but also the how the material got approved in the first place needs to be looked at. Yeah.
The Australian state is fantastic, but obviously everything gets rubber stamped with it. Once you comply initially, then how do you address it? How do you stop it from coming in unless you inspect absolutely everything that hits the shores?
And in this case, what do you think could be done differently to prevent this in future?
As far as the Australian construction building industry is concerned, it's really up to the industry to know what it's bringing in. And there should be some form of check and balance before those products even get off the ship.
I don't think there's one answer to that, and I don't think there's any one entity responsible. How far do we go? Do we start looking at all new builds, testing where there could be asbestos or not asbestos, or non-standard equipment that's been used, or I don't know. It's a massive issue.
Well, it's not only the Children's Hospital, there's about 12 other buildings, I understand, that are going to be subject to an audit to see whether they have similar concerns with it all. So you're probably going to end up finding there's going to be a class action there somewhere along the line, because these guys have all had their lives put at risk because of the finding.
Given the scale of these projects and the impact that these findings of asbestos in the contaminated materials will have on the projects themselves, this is a serious matter. You've heard what Perth has to say. I'm sure you have your opinions about it at home. Bas Tadros for Undercurrent.
Stay with us for more Undercurrent after a short break. Welcome back to Undercurrent. Epilepsy is a deadly brain disorder, and Western Australians who suffer from it are waiting 18 months to get access to a diagnosis. David Cumming met with Suresh Rajan to discuss how the waiting times are affecting those with the disorder.
Affecting 24,500 West Australians, epilepsy is the most common serious neurological condition in the state. However, many patients face uncertainty while they endure long waits of up to 18 months to receive a crucial test to be properly diagnosed. I'll be speaking to Epilepsy WA's Chief Executive Suresh Rajan to discuss how this affects patients.
The earlier you start your treatment for epilepsy, the better off you're going to be. So we understand in some cases it can take up to about 5 years to get your medication just right to a point where it's starting to have an impact. So therefore, there's a long lead time to actually get your medication right. The sooner you start the treatment, the quicker you're going to get to a management process, and therefore the less likelihood of hospitalization at a later date. The tests themselves are they're called video EEGs. And what happens with a video EEG is that a person is taken off their medication. So it's a person who's already been diagnosed with epilepsy. They're taken off the medication so that they actually have seizures. And over a period of 1 week to 2 weeks, they're monitored by video technology as well as EEG to determine where exactly in the brain the seizures are occurring. The video EEG will allow the neurologist to understand exactly where the seizures are occurring, then treat that accordingly. Undoubtedly, we will see the longer that a person's unable to be diagnosed and manage the condition, the more chance they have of actually falling into the category of people who will die from the condition. So our concern is that some of those people waiting to be diagnosed and work out exactly where the seizures are occurring will die from the condition and or have remediable epilepsy which isn't being treated. And that's the main concern at the moment. Is there a particular demographic that will be impacted by this? It's probably the children, where we want to get the diagnosis early, or who've had a diagnosis very early, and we want to determine exactly where and how we're going to treat it. So it is going to be the children that are going to be most impacted. And a number of the children that we've spoken to are, around about the age of 17, 18. They're not able to go out and go to work or go do other things in their life because they just don't know when the seizure is going to happen. They're not managing the seizures because we simply haven't found out where the seizures are occurring. At the present time, there's only one bed that's actually being used in Western Australia to do the video EEG, and that one happens to be at Royal Perth Hospital. The waiting list to do video EEG monitoring at the moment is about 74 people on the waiting list. So we know there's a long backlog. Each of them usually takes anything from 1 week to 2 weeks. So we're looking at probably about, somewhere around about 78 weeks of waiting before people can actually come and have their video EEGs done. So the minister's indicated that he's going to roll out some beds at Fiona Stanley Hospital at the end of August. There are 4 beds that are expected to come out. Now, that still requires staff to actually do the monitoring. We had a freeze on public sector employment last year because of the budget deficit that we had, and that meant that we could not employ people, and the minister can roll out as many beds as he wants to without the staff there to use and to monitor these machines and beds. It's going to be useless. In the meantime, it's really a question of the neurologist taking almost a chance in trying different medications. So I'd be inclined, if I was a person with epilepsy, to keep going back to my neurologist to say, and monitoring it very closely in terms of saying, look, it didn't work, that particular medication didn't work, can we try something else? So maybe just by a process of trial and error, we may actually happen to hit upon the right medication purely by chance because we don't have the video technology to work with.
David Cumming for Undercurrent.
Recently, the New South Wales government banned Greyhound Racing. Bianca Wood finds out if the decision will affect the industry in Western Australia.
Earlier this month, New South Wales Premier Mike Baird announced that he will be implementing a ban on greyhound racing in July 2017 due to reports of severe animal abuse. I spoke to manager of greyhounds at Racing and Wagering Western Australia, Barry Hamilton, to find out the impact this could have on the Western Australian industry. Why do people race greyhounds?
I think the reason people get into the sport varies. Some take it as a professional business, so they're in there as full-time trainers. But a large majority of people get into the greyhound, for the love of the dogs, and it's a social sport. So there are families that have been generations of families, grandfathers, fathers and sons all involved in training greyhounds. So there's a really big aspect of the social part of the sport which people are involved in.
How strict are the rules and regulations in Western Australia?
We've got a very strong integrity unit as part of the Racing and Wagering WA, and it's one we're very proud of. It's known nationally as being a very strict group. It's one of those things where we take integrity very, very seriously. So all of the rules and regulations around the greyhound racing is administered and looked over and overseen by our stewards, and Everything we do is about the welfare of the dogs. It's making sure that the dogs race in a safe environment, that they're looked after, and the steward's responsibility is to ensure that the industry comply with those regulations.
The only humane response is to close that industry down. It's chilling, confronting, it's horrific.
And what are your thoughts on the industry ban in New South Wales? Do you think it is justified after the animal cruelty allegation?
It's certainly not our position to question New South Wales' decision. I think what is important is that we learn from the New South Wales decision. So we're going through the recommendations of the McHugh report ourselves and ensuring that those criticisms that McHugh has levelled at the New South Wales industry, can we answer those? Are we operating in the same ethical space as he's suggesting New South Wales needs to ensure that we maintain that social licence, to maintain the confidence of the community in our greyhound racing in Western Australia.
If a similar ban were to happen here, like New South Wales, how do you think it would affect the greyhound racing community?
It would be devastating, and you're taking away livelihood of people. So those people that I was saying before are in there for business. They've invested millions of dollars in infrastructure, in kennels, in breeding stock. So they would just be decimated, they would be wiped out. But from the social perspective, it would take away from the community. One of those things that people enjoy to do is to go to the races and see the dogs race.
What are some ways that you will ensure a ban does not happen in Western Australia?
So it goes back to our integrity. It's important that we understand exactly what the roles and responsibilities are in terms of maintaining that social licence. We're continually looking at those points along the greyhound's life where those exit points are, making sure that we've got very strong rules around tracking of greyhounds so we know where they are at all the points of their life, making sure that injuries are kept to a minimum by track design, track surface, and then looking at ways that we can improve the adoption process when they've retired from racing so that they have a really good, happy life as a pet.
What happens to the dogs once they have finished their racing career?
Okay, so there's a variety of things that can happen. Most often the owners or trainers will keep the dogs as pets themselves. It's very, very common for me to go to a trainer's house and see 3 or 4 of their old racers up on the lounge or around the property. We also have a RAWA-sponsored Greyhounds as Pets program where we assess the dogs and they then go out to adopted homes. But pretty much what we're looking for is to retire those dogs into a family life or pet situation.
Bianca Wood reporting for Undercurrent.
The Young and Glamorous came out in full swing this weekend to show their support for the launch of John Kay's latest film. The Undercurrent team went along to meet with the independent filmmaker at the red carpet premiere.
This film, Irreversible Choices, is about decisions that we make every day in life. It's mostly based on reckless driving, speed driving, all the things that most people, when they're ungrateful, that they do. That's what the film is about, pretty much. I wrote the film, I directed the film, and I am part of the cast as well. Most of my friends, they're all like young teenagers, and most of them, they don't know what can happen like when you're driving and speed driving at the same time and stuff. So every time when I'm watching them and every time when we're together driving, I always see these things that can happen, even though they don't happen right away, but they can be able to occur in the future. Writing it wasn't hard for me because I already had some information or background information about it. I used my crew in Sydney. We had somebody who did the management of the cast. The film itself has got about 55 cast in it. So it was really good and everybody really loved it, especially in Sydney. And and now we're showing it here. So let's just hope that we'll get more people who wants to be into this industry. Because I know a lot of people wants to do it, but they don't actually see the opportunities around. So I want this film to be able to open other opportunities and other filmmakers, like young filmmakers like myself, to be able to know that they can do it if they put their mind into it. It will make a huge difference because it gives you something to live for. It gives you something that you always want to do, and so it just gives you hope for everything. They love it. It takes them off the streets, and they get to connect with the other youth on set. They get to learn more and develop more skills as well. So they just love it. We always try to give the opportunity to everybody who needs it and everybody who deserves it. And I've met a lot of hard-working people like young Martin, who was actually the cameraman and assistant director on the film as well. He worked really hard. I just love it. I can be able to change people's lives. I can be able to give people a career. I can be able to teach people through my films, give them hope and show them things in different ways. And it's very important because, like, as you can see, the whole African community came here to support, and we are all getting together, connecting. Most people were outside talking, connecting, and that's all we want. We just want to keep moving forward. Definitely, I got another one coming, and that's going to be, we're going to start filming it as soon as I get back to Sydney. We'll start getting the cast together and getting the crews together and work on it. Yeah, we didn't go to the cinemas, not because we didn't want to. We actually did, but due to our possibilities of the moment, we couldn't afford the cinemas. But then it's a good idea to have a place like this where people can come and connect and watch the film and all. Because the main point of having all these screenings from Sydney to here and then Adelaide is just to get everybody to know the film, everybody to get to learn from the film, everybody to know what the message is about in the film. And it's pretty much just to get the message across. At the moment, we have one more stop to go, which is Adelaide, and that's next week, Saturday. We started up, but last week we were in New South Wales, and it was big. It was amazing. There was more than 200 people there, and it was really great. Everybody came out dressed nice, and they all loved the film. And and I met most people there who said, "Look, I want to be an actor. Put me in your next film." And I said, "Look, I love that. You know, I want to see that in people. I like that kind of spirit," and it was really great.
Today she's proud of John Mary. He's grown up in a good condition, and he's the third born. And John, as a mother, she said she's very happy for today with her film, and yeah, he's very good boy, and then as a mother, she's very, very proud to see that John Mary, he's good, he's doing great job with his movie. Thank you very much.
You and your son can go to hell for all I care.
Angela Albuquerque for Undercurrent.
Thank you for watching this episode of Undercurrent. Don't forget to catch up with us online. Take care, and we'll see you next time. To catch up with us online.